guys about why we cannot create in a state of stress. So I'm really excited to give this talk today because stress is something I'm, if it sounds weird, really passionate about, which is really what led me to study psychoneuroimmunology, which is really about the mind-body connection. So stress is a big part of that, and I'm fascinated by how stress affects our thoughts, our feelings, and the kind of behaviours that we make, and also how stress affects the internal mechanisms and the working of the body. So I read a stat the other day, which was that 74% of people in the United Kingdom have been unable to cope and completely overwhelmed at some point in the past year. That stat is probably actually a lot higher than that. So stress is really an epidemic, in particular chronic stress. So many of us are chronically stressed. The thing is that when you're stressed, you are pushing things, you're forcing outcomes, there is conflict and there is resistance. And in terms of the body-mind continuum, when we are stressed, we are in a very disintegrated, I've talked about integration before, unaligned and disconnected state. And we cannot create a life we want when we are within that mode, so being unaligned, disconnected and disintegrated. What you will create is more of the same. Because if stress is the state you're in when you're making decisions, if stress is guiding your behaviour and your patterns of thinking and your patterns of feeling, then you're going to create more situations in your life which reflect the state you were in when you made those decisions, or reflect the behaviour that you are demonstrating in the world. So stress energizes our ego. So stress is really comes down to survival. And the ego is all about the survival of the self. So when we are in a stressful mode, when the physiology is shifted to be in a state of stress, which for many of us is something that has been happening for years and years and years, then we experience stress-based self-limiting emotions. So these are emotions like fear, unworthiness, lack, anger, resentment, regret. And do you think it's possible that when you're in the grip of those emotions, that you could create a life that's free of them? And of course, the answer is no. So stress begets stress. It creates more of itself. And it does that in the same way that being in a bad mood creates more of the being in a bad mood. And that is because of the way that stress, that the physiology of stress and the emotions of stress condition the brain and the body. So one of the primary things that I do with my clients is to teach them how to create new feelings. I've said this again, and I'll say it many times again, it's kind of my motto, but we don't make choices in alignment with what we want. So we don't make choices based on what we want with our conscious mind. We make choices based on how we feel. And so a fear-based mind makes fear-based decisions. A stress-based mind makes stress-based decisions. A doubt-based mind makes doubt-based decisions. An anxiety-based mind makes anxiety-based decisions. And stress is really at the helm of all of these. So any kind of decision you're making in your life that comes from a negative, self-limiting emotion has to be tied to the fact that you are in a stress response, basically. So the most fundamental thing that we need to learn to do in order to start creating more of what we do want and less of what we don't want is to learn how to move beyond the stress-based state of the body-mind continuum, which really means to learn how to let go of self-limiting stress-based emotions and learn a new set of emotions. So the most fundamental thing that we need to learn to do in order to stop creating more of what we don't want and start creating more of what we do want is to learn how to move beyond the stress-based state of the body-mind continuum, which really means to learn how to let go of self-limiting stress-based emotions, those negative emotions, and learn how to embody a new set of emotions. And the way I explain this is it's a little bit like making a new set point, or you could understand it like a thermostat. So when we have been in a chronic stress-based mode for years or months, what happens is that the body and the mind become basically conditioned to that. So it becomes that the stress and the fear-based limiting emotions that are, literally tied to the stress response of the body become the new set point. So it's the new reference point that we're always returning to. And you may not even be conscious that this is happening. And I'm going to do another talk soon. I'm going to tell you guys some things I almost guarantee you don't know about stress, which hopefully is going to blow your mind. But we condition the body to this new set point. And so everything that we do, everything that we see in our life, everything that happens to us is really returning the body to that set point that it's been conditioned to. And so if we want to change, and if we want to start creating a new life for ourselves, and if we want to start being able to do different things or experience different things and not have more of the same, more of the things that we don't want, then we have to learn how to change our set point. And the way that you change your set point is it's all about learning and it's about practice. So we don't tend to think that emotions are things that you learn. We think that emotions are things that happen to us, but they're not. Your emotional responses are conditioned responses to things in your life. And so you need to learn and then practice a new repertoire of feelings. And you're not going to get there unless you do practice. So we need to look at these things as skills that we build on, as tools that we use, and realize that emotions are processes that we do. And if we want to stop experiencing fear, if we understand that fear isn't something that happens to me, fear is something that I do, fear is a process that I go through, if you understand that, then you can apply that same thinking, because it is applicable to all emotions. Joy is something that you do. Joy is a process that you do. And so you need to learn a new repertoire of emotional states and rehearse them enough that they become your new set point, that they become your new reference range. And so that means that things in your life are then helping you to return to that. You're viewing things through that state. Your body and your mind are wanting to return to that set point that you have now created, because we get given a set point. Stuff happens to us in our life, right? And we are usually at the complete mercy of our environment and our circumstances. And as children, that's just the way it is. But as adults, you can learn to be somebody different. You can, and that sounds extreme, and in a way it is, but it's about learning a new set of emotions, a new set of feelings that are going to guide your decisions, your behaviors, your choices. And you only get things in your life that are in alignment with the decisions you're making, with the way you're thinking, and with the behaviors that you demonstrate. And that all comes from the feeling state that you are in as a conditioned response, as a day in, day out way that your body has this set point of being. Final thing that I want to say, and I could do a whole day talking about this, but we create from our heart. That is not mambo jumbo. That is science. We create from heart-based, elevated emotions, and those emotions are things like gratitude, thankfulness, love, abundance, appreciation. those are the emotions that we truly create from. And when I say create, I mean that you create the good stuff, the things that you want to have in your life. You create them from those emotions, because we create from higher states of consciousness. So elevated emotions, heart-based emotions, represent higher levels of consciousness. And again, this is a science. I could show you an image that would make you fully aware that this is how it is, that literally the energy in the body raises, and we can measure this when we experience those elevated emotions. And when we experience stress-based emotions, the energy in the body drops, the state of consciousness drops. So stress-based emotions represent lower levels of consciousness. The other thing I want to say is that, and I could get a little bit into quantum physics here, which is something I'm really passionate about as well. I'm a pretty passionate person, but I'm not going to, because that's not the scope of this video right now. But your heart emits a very powerful magnetic frequency. When you experience those elevated emotions, the power, the amplitude, and the coherence of that magnetic frequency coming from your heart is supercharged. And everything is energy, right? So again, that is not wafty. I'd love to give you a talk about why that is so, talking about science and quantum physics, but everything is energy. And so the energy that you're putting out, the energy that you are emitting through your heart, that magnetic field that you're giving out, okay, what does a magnet do? Well, it either repels something or it attracts it. And again, that's science. So if you are emitting elevated emotions, higher states of consciousness, higher frequency waves of the emotions to do with the heart, love, gratitude, thankfulness, then you are literally, like a magnet, helping to draw those experiences back into your reality. So I'm going to give a whole talk about that, because I think that's pretty epic and powerful, and I really want you guys to learn more about that. But the bottom line is that we cannot create the life we want from a state of stress. The other bottom line is that stress has conditioned your body and your mind as a continuum to think and feel and behave in a certain way. The other bottom line, which is the biggest bottom, is that if you want to create a life that you love, then you have to learn a new repertoire of emotions. You have to learn to change your set point. And that is completely possible. In fact, you are wired to do that. So I covered a little bit more than I was planning to in this talk, which is often the way. Honestly, I feel like I could talk for about a day on most of the things I talk about, and maybe at some point I will do that. But for now, that's it from me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So send me a message, comment on this post, and I will see you all soon.